Hey everyone, welcome to Founders 365 with me, Steven Haggerty. Today I'm joined by Rainey, co-founder of Pluto. How are you today, Alex?
I'm good, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Really keen just to start this conversation off by getting a better understanding of what Pluto is.
Sure thing. So Pluto is a travel startup, first and foremost, and we really exist to help people to make the most of their travels. We do this by providing useful tools, all done through our mobile app, to take the hassle out of either discovering, planning, or protecting a trip. Now, we launched our travel insurance product, Pluto Cover, in late 2018. Quickly became the #2 travel insurer in the UK on Trustpilot, which we're very humbled by.
Amazing.
And we did that really because we saw that about 40% of millennials don't buy travel insurance, and about 70% aren't satisfied with the current provider or insurer that they're with. But now, even getting a bit more exciting, we're also broadening our focus from just protecting trips to also travel planning and travel discovery. So in a couple of weeks, we're about to launch Pluto Pinboard, which is something that we want to become the best and easiest way to create and share travel plans. And we're doing this because we see keeping track of everything when you're traveling, deciding what to do is difficult. There's a huge amount of unpersonalized content out there. Always difficult to get the recommendations of your friends, WhatsApp threads, email threads, Apple Notes, Google spreadsheets, you name it. It's a bit of a mess. People spend 10 hours on traveling, and actually 25% of people that we've spoken to from some industry surveys say planning for trip is one of life's biggest stresses, which is kind of concerning because it's also one of the nicest things that you can do is travel. But yeah, there you go. Travel planning, not so easy.
Amazing. I mean, all of that just sounds so simple on the face of it because it makes sense, right? And that's the best things are. If it makes your life easier, it's going to be attractive. But if we go back in time, how did Pluto, the ideas, first form with you and your co-founder?
Yeah, sure. So if we go back way back, Harry was previously working at, so he's my co-founder. He was previously working at Fjord, which is a design agency. And I was previously working at Accenture, so one of the big tech consultancies. I was there for about 7 years. He was there for a bit less, and he jumped around some different agencies between them. But our experience and background is really digital. Both of us, probably for as long as we can remember, have always wanted to do something ourselves, something entrepreneurial, set up some kind of business. But you never know quite what that is or when the idea is going to land on your lap. And we actually started off by building and launching an insurance chatbot. It was called Mia, and it helped younger people to manage all their insurance in one place. But we very quickly learned young people really don't give much of a care about travel insurance. I don't want to say bad language, but they don't really care about travel insurance or insurance for that matter at all, and they don't really have much of it. So a tool to help them with that is relatively pointless. So power of hindsight, not a particularly useful thing to build. So we took a bit of a step back at that point. And we said, we need to focus on something a bit more specific here, but we also need to focus on something that we're more passionate about. And the travel, from a personal perspective for both of us, is all about travel. We're hugely passionate about it, travel as much as we can. Can't travel that much over the last kind of 4 or 5 months, unfortunately. But I guess that's the least of everyone's worries. But also, I guess, running your own business, you naturally can't get away so much anymore. And we also love building digital products. And we did also still see that there was an opportunity in travel insurance, despite the fact that we're not really finance guys and certainly not insurance guys. And we'd hate to be known for that as well. So, inspired by companies like Monzo, WeTransfer, companies building really interesting companies with incredible design and tech in what were normally quite uninteresting industries like banking or file transfer and some creative tools. So we decided to focus on travel insurance, bring in the passion, but also bring in a clear opportunity space. And that's where we came up with the proposition for Pluto, which was hassle-free travel insurance on the smartphone. But we agreed from the very beginning that our long-term strategy was always going to be about travel and really focusing on removing the hassle from all those different parts of traveling before, during, and after.
I'm curious to know in that first pain point that you guys covered with Mia, young people in travel insurance, what is it that they don't understand about it? Is it just because it's that added expense, or is it just almost like an ancient thing that you feel like your parents only ever do?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of things. When we think about trips in Europe predominantly, then people think the risk is close to zero, especially when they think about the main reasons they might buy travel insurance is for medical cover. They think in Europe, okay, we're covered on the European health card or some of those agreements, so we're not going to have to pay anything. But obviously, that's not really the case, and that could change even more significantly over the next kind of 6 or so months with Brexit. So that's one part of it. They just don't really see the risk, especially in places like Europe. When you look at ski trips or trips further afield, Far East, let's say South America, then you do get a couple of more people wanting to think about buying because they see some more increased risk there. But I guess there may be something historic with it. There's a huge lack of trust when you speak to people. They just view it as this thing that, yeah, I know I should kind of have it. But if I buy it and I have to use it, I'm probably not going to get paid out. So what's the point of even getting in the first place? And they kind of go in with that mindset straight away.
And I guess the way it's been sold before was always that sort of last minute upsell by the flight providers.
Yeah. And normally with a heavy markup.
Yeah. With no context, all it is don't forget travel insurance.
Yeah. And they're probably going to be getting ripped off in those instances, or they're used to going on the price comparison sites and just clicking on the top result, getting covered for a tenner. Not reading anything inside and just kind of going on with it, and probably having a bad experience out the back of that.
How hard was it to overcome that then? How hard was it to sort of get the message across in the right way?
Yeah, so I think one advantage that Harry and I have coming from outside of the industry, not being finance guys, not having any insurance background before starting this up, which some people and some investors rightly said to us at the beginning, you know, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, on the paper.
You're trying to set up an insurance company. Surely not anyone can do this. But it gives us that kind of fresh, unique perspective because we look at it just the same as our customers do, just as travelers, kind of young millennial travelers. And if we can understand some of the wording, and we work, you know, within it now and are setting up a company or have set up a company in the space, if we can't understand some of it still, then what hope do a lot of customers have? So we just tried to come at it from a super fresh perspective from the outside, just saying almost from the ground up. And we did redo the product, the policy, the cover. We did it all from the ground up with our underwriters from the very beginning. And we did that with a huge amount of feedback and input from people from our target audience, understanding the type of language we should use in the policy, the type of things we should cover, how we should lay out and label the purchase journey, how do we break down and deconstruct the purchase so that people can actually chop it up and customize it as they go through and build their own policies, we describe it. So just, you know, a ton of user research, a lot of iterations. You know, we launched it just over a year and a half ago now. It's changed probably hundreds of times, some micro, some macro, but we just kind of honed in and again with a lot of that feedback.
Exactly. At what point did you think now is the time to start moving towards the Pluto pin, this, you know, the design side of things of the traveling?
The pinboard, yeah. So that journey really started probably earlier in this year, kind of really on paper and then design. We've probably been thinking about it since the very beginning and definitely towards the end of last year. At the very beginning, we didn't quite know what it meant for us to be affecting or removing hassle in a broad travel context. You know, we knew we were going to start with insurance. We knew there were some gripes and issues with planning, with the airport experience, with getting things together, and certainly with some elements of discovery. And even though some of the biggest companies in the world are out there spending millions and millions of pounds on the products, you know, Skyscanner, the big booking sites, you know, they're still not solving it because when you really speak to people about that experience, it's still riddled with problems.
Sure.
So it's been brewing in our minds for a while, for sure. And at the beginning of this year, we decided, based on the maturity of the travel insurance product and everything that we know with our travel insurance product, it was time to build our next product, which was Pinboard. So we started building that and designing that at the beginning of this year. The feedback so far from some of the early kind of user research sessions has been super positive. I've had great sign-ups on the early access lists that we've been pushing out the last couple of weeks. So yeah, both super excited to launch it. And quite fortunately, because of the situation and the crisis over the last kind of 3-4 months, we've been able to focus on this a huge amount more than we would have done otherwise. Because normally we have to balance the priorities and focus between the insurance product and the planning product. But we've just almost been able to exclusively focus on that for 3 or 4 months, which, you know, very grateful for. Super good benefit there.
I mean, I guess we've got to talk about it. As you're in the travel world, you must have seen a massive hit from user-based when people just obviously stopped traveling and no need for travel insurance. How did you handle that? And how did you talk me through when it all started to happen, when people stopped traveling, because at the beginning, everyone was sort of like up in the air, not really sure what they were doing. so many unknowns, and then it was like, nope, you can't travel basically. How did your conversation with your co-founder Harry go?
So we sort of saw a very short positive peak in kind of early March, because the worry was there. The pandemic wasn't announced. There was no travel advice against going abroad, but people were still very concerned that there was this thing going around the world and could impact trips. And there was talk of cancelled trips later in the year. So we saw a bit of a positive impact there. And we didn't quite know what to make of that, because we were still trying to understand how big this situation could be.
Sure.
Then the pandemic came out. FCO advice comes in, banning travel from anywhere in the UK to anywhere in the world, and kind of from mid-March, that's when we just see the sales fall off a cliff, and on our growth charts either hit the bottom or just plateau from where they were. And we just sent out some of our kind of quarterly shareholder updates a couple of days ago, or yesterday rather. And this quarter compared to the first quarter in the year, 98% down on almost every metric, from sales and traffic and all these types of things. So, huge impact on the growth story for the business, which is a shame for sure, because we were on a really nice trajectory. Things were going well. And we finally felt like we'd broken into the kind of high growth mode. But, these things happen and they're out of our control. And we kind of quickly looked at each other and just agreed that there's not much we can do about this. The only things we can do is think about. Yeah, exactly. And so we said, what are the costs that we can cut with the business? Are we going to start following parts of the team? Obviously, we're going to cut our growth and marketing costs. Are we going to slow down product development? We're going to get rid of the office. Pull some of our tools that we use. So we kind of went through all of the different areas of the business to see where we could cut costs, and also just reach out to suppliers, even the big companies, and say, hey, can you help us out here? We managed to get about 12 grand's worth of credits, discounts, all kinds of things from different companies we work with, from the AWSs down to the smaller tools that we use, to the office space and all these types of things. To furlough one of the team for about two and a bit months now, and they're still in furlough. So there were some kind of structural organizational changes from that perspective. And then from everything else, for us, it was just like, what are we going to focus on? What are we going to use the time for? We had Pinboard that was already under development already. So we just said, okay, we're just going to shift all of our focus and energy here. We also took a bit of a step back around all the recent events in America, especially around diversity and inclusion for us as a business. And then we were nowhere near taking serious enough and thinking about. So we've been able to devote a huge amount of time and energy into thinking about what are the principles and rules and guidelines and processes we would have put in place now for the business to grow and be successful, and there's a good business for the future. And we've also kicked off our B Corp application process as well. So, a couple of things we're just focusing on.
Kept yourself busy then.
Yeah, we've kept ourselves busy for sure. So trying to make use of the time as best we can.
I'm curious to know, because this is your baby, your co-founder's baby, your CEO. How have you dealt with this as a leader? How have you dealt with this as sort of when people are looking up to you? Because obviously, before, when you're working in Accenture, that wasn't sort of your job, but now you're the first person people look to. How did you manage that personally?
I think for us, it's all about giving off a bit of a calm energy. We are big proponents and readers of Stoicism. If you're familiar with the ancient Greek philosophy, much kind of touted by Ryan Holiday in America now, is much more modern kind of take on it. But it is all about just understanding those things that are inside and outside of your control. And if there are things outside of your control, then there's not much you can do about them. So the getting stressed or angry or frustrated about them is probably going to do much more damage than it is good. And if we can allow the team to kind of feed off that, and if we can exude that sort of positive energy, to keep calm, to keep positive, to keep focused on the things we can control, then that's going to have a positive impact. I hope the team have felt that. I think we've had some positive feedback on that. And I know that from working in previous projects, when things go wrong and leaders kind of spiral out and start to get angry and the blame game starts, all these types of situations, or people start really wondering the what if scenarios, then that negative energy just spirals out of control. So we just try to keep things calm and just keep focused on the things that we can. Love it.
And for you moving forward, do you think you're going to put any changes in place that you've done over the last couple of months? You mentioned about the office, for example. Keep an office, because so many companies now are going, right, fully remote, work from home, don't need an office. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so definitely no office right now. We've been in the office as soon as we could, notwithstanding a bit of a notice period. I think we haven't quite decided when we're going to go back to the office. I think we know that we don't want to do a complete virtual setup. There's a huge amount of value we place on getting together as a team, socially, personally, but also for certain creative meetings, for strategy meetings, for things that aren't more mundane, kind of run of the mill. That probably for us looks something like 2 or 3 days in the office. We need to find the right office environment that supports that, makes that cost effective. So we don't have a desk that's sitting empty for the rest of the half of the week that we're not there. And for us, I think at this point, the earliest we're committed to is the very end of the year, maybe early next year, to think about getting back to the office. Not only because we want to give our team the time to adjust to coming back and let them come back when they're right and comfortable. Would by no means force anyone to come back either. But I think we've all started to see the huge benefits that come with working from home much more. The work-life balance, not only productivity increases. One of our team is working in the hills, near Milan, where his family is. One of the other ones who's furloughed, who's still working a bit part-time actually here and there. He's in a caravan driving around Europe and driving around parts of the UK and still able to work, the couple hours a week that's required. So, very fortunate in that respect that our jobs allow us to do that. And we definitely see that being a long-term change within the business. But we definitely want to get back to some level of office time, because I'd hate not to see my co-founder every week and see the rest of the team every week and just chat about some stuff, because the things that come out of serendipity, sometimes you can't plan that stuff, and some of the best ideas come from just riffing.
I think there will be a fine balance that a number of people are going to struggle with. Because some people are so much more like either we're doing it this way or that way. But I think you sort of explain it perfectly, where 2-3 days a week in the office, or the other way around, 2-3 days a week at home. But having those creative meetings together, because once you're in flow in a meeting, especially a creative meeting or a strategic meeting, there's something that you can't quite do with that over like Zoom or just a call. And then it's, when you go for the break in that meeting, you pop down and get a coffee, those little ideas there start coming alive. And there's all these little tiny bits in the cog that really help a strategy or creative meeting work face to face.
I can agree more.
Exactly. So I'm really curious to know, in terms of how you, if you don't mind me asking, in terms of the investment side of things, how you dealt with that. How did you approach that? Because it's one of those things that a lot of founders struggle with. A lot of founders maybe do a little bit too early or too late sometimes. How did you know, okay, this is the time to go for investment and start those conversations?
Yeah, so we've done a couple of different rounds across the company history. It all started summer 2018. That's when I first quit my job from Accenture. I was the first to join full time, and Harry joined about 4 or 5 months after that. We knew that we needed to raise, quite. I think I did okay, maybe. We needed to raise a bit of cash. We needed to get a few other things in place. So we started off by raising 130K, and that was from angels, predominantly not quite within our network, but within our networks. And we just had a ton of conversations and kind of had to, much to my bosses just made Accenture now, because they never knew I was doing this at the time. But, lunchtimes, evenings, weekends, just seeing angels, networking, doing as much as we can, certain pitch events and these kind of things. So we managed to cobble together that very early kind of round. And, the timing for that, it's difficult to know when is right, because we didn't have anything built. We didn't have anything material. We had a couple of loose agreements from our underwriter. We weren't even regulated as a business. We just had a slide pack and a couple of demos and some positive user research. And I guess that's probably what most kind of pre-seed companies have when they raise their very first small round. But that was the beginning for us, and that was quite a learning experience coming from the consultancy world, having to ask people for 10-20 grand.
What was the biggest learning that you took away from that?
Very early on, I think the storytelling aspect and the things that are important to angels were different to the things that I thought would be important to them. We would focus in on explaining the product, a lot about the customer research, the feedback we've been getting, how incredible the UX was going to be, the technology was going to be amazing. And a lot of the time they weren't our target audience, and for the vast majority of the time they weren't. And they want to know the product's going to be good, but it's also not built, so there's nothing for them to see. So understanding the unit economics, the business model, the market size, the kind of venture growth style potential. Can you take this 100x? Not necessarily that the very early angels are asking that kind of stuff, but they're definitely starting to think about it. And these are just things I've never thought of in my life, before that point. So I think it was, reframing the story and focusing on things that I just never knew about before, and suddenly they were really important things. That was some of the early learnings for sure.
I'm guessing you got that learning from investor feedback, pitch feedback.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Sometimes easily, sometimes hard, but yeah.
Because it really sounds like you threw yourself into it. You threw yourself into pitching. You threw yourself into meeting with investors, which is the right way to do it. For you, if you didn't do that, did you have a plan B?
We didn't. If we weren't able to raise the money.
Yeah.
I think we would have tried to see if we could. We would have always need to raise money to do anything. We're not in the position to be able to have a bit of a mini war chest in our own bank accounts, or that's easily accessible to run an early stage business. And just because of the nature of the company that we were trying to launch, a cash flow negative for a very, very long time, and break even is far on the horizon. And that's just the way it is for some businesses. Smaller sales products businesses, sometimes they can bootstrap and they can do it themselves. Many incredible tech startups have also done that on very, very little funding. People like Notion included. So definitely can be done. But I think we would have just worked much harder for another couple of months to see if we could actually get more traction, more credibility, and kind of go back out and hit the road again, and not just kind of give up on saying, okay, we're not going to be able to get funding. We're not a fundable business. We're just, okay, what was wrong with this story? Get as much honest feedback as we can, and go back 6 months later.
Yeah, spot on. It's all about learning. It's all about getting that feedback and taking that feedback on board as well.
Yeah.
You went in with an open mind, knowing that you're going to get feedback, and through that feedback you managed to secure investment effectively, which is fantastic. So you got the pinboard launch in a couple of weeks, or a couple of months, did you say?
Couple of weeks. When that launches, how does the Pluto platform is going to look? What's the framework? What's the sort of journey for the next steps? Sure. So all going to be contained within the existing mobile app that we have. So for all of our insurance or Pluto cover customers, they're going to open that one day, and they're going to be able to start planning their trips. And obviously we've been communicating this heavily, so it shouldn't be too much of a surprise for them. Those customers, it is very much a kind of added benefit or added perk for getting cover with us. You can also plan your trips and store your travel plans and make new travel plans, and even discover travel plans from influencers on Instagram or your friends or whatever through the platform as well. For other customers or for newer users that are coming straight into the app, it's going to be, prompt them to download the app, come straight in, create your first pinboard. That's the primary thing that we want them to do. We want them to get a real feel for the product straight away. Yeah. So that means, Steven, you're going to Copenhagen later this year, you create a pinboard for Copenhagen, you start to add the restaurants that you want to go to, the bars you want to drink at, the restaurant museums you want to see, the boat ride.
Such a good idea, because you immediately get the customer imagining that they're there.
Yeah.
Visualizing, feeling like they're there.
Exactly. And hopefully even with these crazy uncertain times, especially with what's happened to Spain over the last kind of 48 hours, which is no doubt going to rock people's confidence to no end. That a tool like Pinboard can still be super useful for them, because it helps them to keep planning, to keep thinking, to keep focused on the future when that next trip is. Stay inspired in that sense, and start to come and cobble together that perfect trip for when they do feel comfortable to travel again.
Yeah, there's obviously opportunity there for you to really take that side of things on board, because there's so many people have just been stuck at home for 2-3 months now, itching to get away. The majority of the UK population do seem to live for a holiday. So for you, when you're sort of putting this in front of them, saying, look, let's start planning, let's get there, let's do it for October, November, whenever. It just gives them hope, I guess, at the end of the day in this current situation. Yeah.
And we've also worked with a bunch of different influencers and brands to not only create some of this initial content, guide for, let's say, Copenhagen, for that city. So if you didn't want to create your own, you go to Copenhagen, then you can just go on there and you can find one that's already been created and see if that takes your fancy. But we've also been conscious that the travel environment is going to be different over the next 6-12 months, maybe even longer. That means maybe more domestic travel, maybe even more short haul travel. So we tried to fill that early kind of discovery pinboard set with some boards from the UK, from Cornwall, from Norfolk, from other parts that you might not normally visit. Some incredible parts in the UK we've discovered, even from doing the research to pull these boards together that are right on your doorstep or 2-hour train ride away.
I love risk
is obviously much lower. Yeah, exactly. So, we're trying to make sure that the product is suitable for the now, with the context of coronavirus as well, because we can't just create boards for Singapore, Hong Kong, because that's going to be difficult for a lot of people to go to right now.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if you did do that, sure, there's a possibility it could happen, possibility it will become popular. But like you said, there's still so much unknown. Great example being Spain. What was it? They gave like 5 hours notice and it's like done. So we really don't know. So it's a really interesting time. And to be honest, kudos to you for really just focusing on moving forwards and focusing on what's next, and not so much adapting the business because you already had all this in plan, but also making sure that you didn't go, okay, well, this business is now gone, is not really needed anymore, when it very much is. And what you're doing next sounds exactly what you should be doing next as well.
I appreciate that, Steven. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Listen, you've been fantastic. This has been Founders 365. Last question. How do people find out more about Pluto?
Pluto.travel.
Easy.
That's it.
Easy. Love it. Alex, thank you so much for coming on. And I really look forward to seeing the updates for Pluto and seeing how you guys are getting on in the future.
Amazing. Thanks, Steven.
Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. This has been Founders 365.